Hey everybody, welcome to another day of Learn from the Pros live. Today we have my good friend Steve Thom. He's going to be joining us shortly, and we're talking everything system design, optimization, and tuning. Steve is my favorite system tech. Yes, you heard it here first. And the person I'd prefer to have with me all the time when I do have the opportunity to bring him in to be my system tech. He's definitely my first choice. So excited for you guys to hear from him today. Just by way of housekeeping, if you're new here to this channel, go ahead and subscribe. It's very important that you subscribe. Help us to continue to do this. We want to know, I want to hear from you. I want to know that you're getting value out of this series. Let me know. Hit me up on my email, jrayproaudio@gmail.com, or head over to my website, Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. Opt in with your email. That way I can let you know what's happening throughout the week. I always try to send out an email on Sunday night, kind of let you know what's coming up for the week. Shortly, probably in about 3 weeks, we're gonna move Learn from the Pros to once a week. It's kind of getting a little bit tedious to do it 3 days a week, and to be very honest, we're running out of professionals to talk to. So I don't want to start recycling content. So we might be moving to once or twice a week. I'll keep you guys posted on that. But definitely subscribe. Definitely share the page and let people know what we're doing. We're trying to connect you to the best professionals that I have access to, so that you can learn. And we have some really exciting guests definitely coming up in the near future. So subscribe. Also for audio training, if you want to take your audio mixing game and just generally speaking to the next level, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/, Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. There's a few different levels of subscription there, and trust me, for those who are already subscribed, they'll tell you that the content has been incredible. The reviews have been incredible. I'm pretty excited. I'm pumped about it. And we have some good master classes coming up on Tuesday. We have Digital Advanced Training. So if you're interested in learning the Digital Console in depth, you want to make sure that you get on that right away, because that is coming up on Tuesday. So without further ado, let me get the one and only Instagram-less Steve Thom. I'm my own broadcast guy, so you guys got to bear with me while I cue this up. But there he is, Steve Thom. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
thank you for joining. I
Just,
really
just for the record, I'm going to cut you off for 1 second. I'm no longer Instagramless.
what? And
I
you
haven't done
haven't
anything
sent
with it, but I haven't.
you haven't said I should be like your first follow. I will follow back. I promise. I'll follow back.
All right. After today, I'll get on that in a week or two.
All right, man. Well, listen, I'm excited about having you on. I'm excited about people being able to. One of the themes, actually, from our previous broadcast for a few days, we've had a few front of house guys on. Kenny Kaiser was on front of house for the Killers. Um, my good friend Steve, another Steve Locke was on yesterday. He's front of house for Third World Coffee and Davido. And of course, people heard from me for a little bit, and Tim Hibbert was on front of house for Cardi B. And there was a common theme in all those conversations. They talked about the relationship between the front of house guy and the system tech and how important that is. So today we'll bring some validation, if you will, to that conversation, because now all the viewers get to hear from a real life system tech. I mean, Kenny used to be a system tech. I don't know how much of that he does anymore, but you are actively a system tech. In fact, you're one of the few guys who I've ever met that is really more interested in system teching than you are in mixing in a lot of cases.
That's true. That's true. I
So,
mean, for me, I would just really enjoy the technical aspect of getting good sound and even sound throughout the whole audience area. And, some of the interesting challenges of whether it needs to be noise restrictions off-site kind of thing, or keeping your stage clean from low frequency, that kind of stuff. I mean, I obviously love the artistic aspect of sound engineering, but I also come from a background more of, the science stuff, which really, that gets me going a lot.
right. So let's start there. Talk to me a little bit about your background. Talk to me about how you got into this business. Did you always know this was going to be a career? Like, was it always going to be a thing?
Oh, not at all. I mean, I basically just fell into this business. My last year of high school, rather than actually going to classes. What I wanted to do was do a work placement.
Nice.
So with that, I ended up getting placed at a local Toronto-based AV company.
Right.
Uh, had absolutely zero experience. Walked in on my first day and met my supervisor, and he goes, "Hey, you want to work this weekend?"
Cool.
Sure. So I literally just walked in the door. They needed an extra set of hands on the weekend, and I've been doing it ever since. Um, what sort of drew me more to audio and system design later on, once I sort of figured out what that was really, again, just the physics, the acoustical science aspect. I mean, I've always been, a bit of a science nerd myself, but so that stuff's always interested me. And nothing really beats setting up a big old PA and just cranking your favorite tunes through it. So
Right, right. So talk to me a little bit about the interest in science because again, here, listen, people, there's a lot of things about Steve Thom that makes him one of a kind. First of all, the fact that he didn't have Instagram all these years was like the very first thing. But then after the not having Instagram stuff, I found it so the first time we had this conversation about mixing versus system teching, Steve and I were booked on the same gig. So we were down at Young Dundas Square. It was a Indie Fridays. It was a country night.
mhm, I remember
And
it well.
yeah, and usually if we're booked on like the same gig, we tend to like share up the responsibilities, right? Like, because we're both booked as A1. So I was like, yeah, you want to mix? I'll mix one or two bands, and you can mix one or two bands, whatever. And he was like, nah, man, I just want a system tech. I was like, what? Who is this guy? Where did you guys find this dude? And then first of all, if you ever speak to like you guys hear his voice now, right? Like when you speak to him on the phone, the person who shows up is completely different from the picture that you had in your head of what this person looks like, right? So yeah, that's crazy. But then like to hear somebody talk about being interested in sciences, like talk to me about that because I hated physics. It's
Yeah,
funny that it turned out like, and my initial goal was to be a pilot, which is so physics oriented, but I
that's
hated
all
studying
physics and math.
physics.
Yeah,
I know. So talk to me a little bit about being interested in that. Like
yeah.
what led to that interest early on?
Well, I mean, really just sort of being interested in science in general from a young age, reading, popular mechanics and stuff, articles about that. But also, I don't know how good you were at your math and physics stuff. I was never good at the, like, paper applications and stuff. I was really good
Right.
at the experimental side of things, doing it,
Cool. Gotcha.
which is really how this sort of worked out nicely for me because I can get my science fix without having to sit down and crunch numbers all day, looking at a calculator, writing a bunch of stuff down on paper. Is I can
Right.
actually do it and you can experience the results as it happens, which is great.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
That's sort of where it came from for me, was being able to, experiment in real time, see, or well, not really see, but actually hear the changes you're making and go, oh, that's how that works. And then, a sort of a hands-on method more so than a theory method for me.
Right. So take me through now like the early days of your career. Like how when if you can remember, when did it sort of start to flourish and what were some of those like landmark moments that you can think back to and say, okay, this was definitely at like, TSN, which is our version of ESPN, they have this thing called the TSN turning point, right? Where they when they're playing back highlights like or, for example, you think of Michael Jordan, now that The Last Dance is fresh in everybody's mind. You talk about like the 97 flu game, right? Which
Yeah.
turns out it was food poisoning. But talk to me about like what are some of those early turning point moments that kind of spurred your career forward?
It's a good question. And I don't know, it's tough to think back all those years, but I guess really, I mean, early on in my career, I was more just sort of, you know, obviously general stagehand starting off. First forays into audio would have been, more of like a A2 and patch tech guy for a lot of corporate shows.
Right,
Uh, but sort of getting into system tech, and I guess sort of the quote unquote turning point would really be just myself, just more deciding that's what I wanted to be doing more of and dedicating myself into learning more about it, as opposed to just doing gigs and hoping for the best. So, investing in the Rational Acoustics. I don't know if we can say brand names on this.
yeah, we can. It's a private program, so we don't
All
care what
right, cool.
anybody thinks.
All right, good, good. I gotta check. I don't want to get you kicked off the air,
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, listen, I have a reputation already for bashing brands I don't like, so hey.
I've only heard of one band that
Yeah,
you one band that you batted.
we won't go there today.
That one we won't go into,
We'll
but
keep this one positive
yeah,
today. How about that?
yeah,
But I
sounds
like
good.
smart, so we can talk about smart.
Yeah. So with them, investing the time and the money into going and doing the 3-day course, buying my first smart license, probably going on 6 years ago now or so. Doing the course, and that was really an eye opener again into the sort of hands-on physical applications and science applications of what we're actually doing with sound waves once they leave the speaker in the air.
Right,
The next probably big turning point was obviously I'd been working with D&B products a lot, but it was just figuring them out as I go kind of thing, or what other people had shown me. But again, sort of making the personal and conscious decision to fly down to Asheville and do one of their training courses for a weekend.
right,
And that was another eye opener. It's like, wow, there's so much more you can do on the design and the remote software side instead of just putting the
right.
boxes in the air and hoping for the best, right?
Right. No, I want to touch on that. And I don't want to touch
Mm,
on necessarily the brand side of it. What I want to
right.
bring out from what you just talked about, because see, I meet some young guys sometimes who want to get into this industry, and it mystifies me when when people don't are not interested in making an investment in themselves.
Mhm.
So like for example, people will hit me up, right? And they say, "Man, I want to be a because I kind of made my name in the industry as a monitor engineer, right?" They go, "I want to be a top-notch monitor engineer like you." So I ask them, the first question I'll ask is, "Okay, what ears do you own?" And they go, "Sure, SE215s." I'm like, "Well, call
Okay.
me back when you're serious, because
Yeah.
like when I decided I wanted to be a top-notch touring monitor engineer, I went out and bought UE 18 Pros at the time, which was not. No, I get people have constraints with budget, but
Mm,
if over a time it's not important enough to you to save up, and like, to me right now, building my studio, that's more important than me buying a new car. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like it's always kind of been that way for me, and I make no apologies for that. But for those watching, like, when you hit me up and you ask me what do I need to do, it's probably going to involve you making some sort of investment in yourself and in your craft. So talk to me a little bit about how important that's been, because you're telling me about, all I heard was you spending money to get better and to like it, you know what I mean? My brain works really different. For those who are
Yeah.
watching, if you haven't figured that out by now, my brain is not very linear. Like it just hears what it wants to and interprets what it wants to. My wife will tell you that's very much the case. But yeah, out of all that, I heard you spending money going to
Mhm.
Asheville. I'm sure, like, I meet guys all the time who are expecting somebody else to do it for them. Like, they want to find somebody to find them and make the investment in them. They're waiting for an artist to buy them ears. They're waiting for a production company to spend money on them going for training. And I wish I could, like, I don't know. So talk to me about that. Like, that willingness to spend money and invest in yourself. Like, how important has that been to you throughout your career? And was that something you're born with? You just woke up one morning and decided, yeah, I'm going to do this, or you just have that hunger?
Yeah. Well, that's like that's totally something that. Sorry, I heard somebody yelling at me outside my door. Yeah, that's not something necessarily I was born with or started in the career with. It was more something I just sort of came to a realization, you know, throughout the first few years of my career, was that no one's going to really do it for you. You know, you
Right,
have to sort of take the onus on yourself. And like you said, the financial aspect of investment is a big part of it, but there's also a time aspect. You got to book off maybe a weekend or a few days in busy season to go and take that smart course or the D&B course, whatever it may be. But
right,
then also after you've done the course, spend some time, read through your notes, practice what you've learned, actually put it into play, because it's one thing to do the course and just have a bunch of information get thrown at you, but it doesn't really stick. You got to get out there and do it, and practice it every day for it to really get internalized to the point where it's second nature. And
right,
much like mixing, you got to do a lot of it. So if you sign up for one of Jason Reynolds' amazing mixing courses, if you're not going to take what you learned in that course and then go and practice it, you know.
right.
So that's sort of the biggest thing too. Is it's not just a financial investment; it's the time investment you get that goes along with it.
Right, right. And
Mhm.
and I guess it's that whole point of information without application is useless, right? Like if you're not applying that information, it's kind of useless information, and the people who have lots of useless information end up on Jeopardy. They don't necessarily
Hey,
end up
that could be
doing it.
financially
I
profitable too. You
mean,
never know,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. I mean, I wish I was that smart. I mean, I
Hey,
saw a guy win
that
like,
guy Ken Jennings. What did he win? Like hundreds
yeah,
of thousands.
I
That's good
know.
for him.
Like people win hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that. So maybe there's a place for useless information, but not right here. Not for people who want to do something special in like an industry for sure.
Absolutely, it's
So
got to be practical applications to it. You know?
yeah, definitely. So before we get into approaches as a system tech, I'm sure, and I want to remind everybody that if you have questions, I am. Today we're using Zoom, so we had some challenges with Rendezvous, so we jumped on the backup, which is Zoom that we're bringing to you. So that has pushed my YouTube window further to the right. So if you see me looking off to my right,
Hold on. I got to sign off for a second.
yeah,
I got somebody on the door.
yeah, no problem. If you guys see me looking further to the right, it's because my YouTube window. I'm watching the comments. So if you guys have questions, please drop them in there. We're gonna jump into obviously Steve is DNB certified. He works on everything. He's also, I'm sure he's Adamson certified. When he comes back and puts his headphones in, he'll probably confirm that. But Steve, I was just telling them that you're DMB certified. You're also Adamson Applied certified as well.
Not yet. I never actually got a chance to finish
Oh,
the
you
second
didn't?
day of the Adamson
Well,
course.
yeah.
So
There's that.
yeah,
Yeah, but the
I had to
second
go
day
back to
is.
Niagara.
I
So
mean, the second
I mean
day.
that was hanging PA, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
But you've
Put it in
worked
the air.
on
Hope it doesn't
everything.
fall down. But
So so it's not only, I mean, yeah, you work mostly on DMB, kind of the
mhm.
situation here with one of the companies that you freelance with. But talk to me about like different types of PA and what like you talk about the big four,
Mhm.
let's say L Acoustics, DMB, Adamson, and Meyer.
Mhm.
Take me a little bit through as a system tech what you love about each. We won't talk about the negatives today. We're gonna keep today positive. So
Keep it all positive. The sun is
yeah,
shining. It's a beautiful day. Let's be
right.
positive.
And obviously Kenny made a good point. He says normally when he walks into a festival and he talks to a system tech, he said, "What do you love about this PA?" And he's
Mhm.
hoping that the first thing they say is that it sounds good.
Yeah.
So we know that once you get to a certain level, once you get up into those sort of big four, and I guess you could put in like Martin Audio in there
Mhm.
into the conversation. You can bring in
Yeah.
like the
I've
new
been very
JBL
impressed with
stuff.
Martin's stuff. So I
Yeah, the
don't see it
new
a lot in the Toronto market, but
right, right, the new JBL stuff, the A12s and A8s.
yeah,
That
it's
stuff sounds
fantastic.
pretty good. So we know once you get to a certain level,
It all sounds good.
it all sounds really good. So tell me a little bit about now some of the things that impress you about each brand of PA. And when we talk about PA brands, we're talking about the top lines for
Mhm.
purposes of this conversation. So please, those watching,
Yeah.
don't ask Steve how he feels about JBL Eons.
Well,
That's
I'll tell you
not
how I feel, but not on this one
that
because this is a
not
positive one.
not yeah, not for this particular conversation. So if we reference L Acoustics, we're referring to K1, K2.
Mm.
If we reference DMB, we're talking GSL, KSL, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about J's because they still exist in the marketplace. Adamson, we're talking E15, E12, S10,
Mm.
and Meyer, Leo Lion, and maybe some leopard stuff because I know you've done a little bit on that stuff. So
Yeah, I've
take me
done
through,
plenty with that stuff. So
yeah.
yeah.
So take me through some of the individual characteristics that stand out to you as a system tech from the standpoint of a system tech. Because I can talk all day about why I love which brands for
Mhm.
mixing,
Yeah.
um, but as a system tech, yeah, take me through that.
Well, first of all, I'll start with what I know best, which is D&B. Obviously, it sounds great, as they all do. The thing that really ticks a lot of boxes for me with D&B is the just the workflow from, you start with your design in ArrayCalc, you open that file right into R1, it'll automatically populate a control file for you, which you can fully customize. You can do whatever you want with it. And then from there, you connect to your amps. It pushes all the data right to the amplified controllers, and there you go. You got a system ready to go. So just that very linear workflow from step to step to step to finished product. That to me is fantastic.
Right.
Love it. Um, with some of the other brands, so we'll go to Myers, probably the one I know the next best. Love the Galileo.
Right.
Well, now it's the Galaxy they call it, but just that platform of the system processor, the filter set, the routing matrix. Now you can go AVB. You can create a whole AVB ring between a bunch of processors to ship your audio around. It's just that to me is the best part of Meyer. I find.
Right.
Uh, um, Map 3D, fingers crossed, is apparently coming out at some point. So
Right. Right. At some
that'll be a
point.
big improvement. I'm really excited for that actually to happen.
Yeah.
Because yeah, that was. I know we said we weren't going to do any negatives, but one drawback I'll say to Meyer was that map was 2D only.
Right. Right.
From a design perspective, made things a bit challenging.
Right.
Nothing
That
even
that's
worse.
that's an okay negative to mention. I don't
Yeah,
I don't think that's really a negative. I know a
not
lot of
really.
the
It
people,
was great for the time, but it just
yeah. A lot of the
got so
guys
fast.
who watch this program, sometimes I mean a lot of times they get to come on it live, but a lot of times they watch it after. We have a
Mhm.
few people from John Swaby Entertainment in Jamaica, and they're like Meyer. I mean, John has always owned like I think it was a Milo rig, and then now they have a Lion rig that they used for Reggae Sumfest last year. So they're like
Fantastic rig,
even
Lions and 1100s. Love
yeah,
it.
even Steve Locke, who was on yesterday, I actually purposely wore my Meyer sweater for him because he was gonna be on. But yeah, they're huge like Meyer guys. Which nothing wrong with that. Like I mean, we've had obviously great success. They've been running Reggae Sumfest with Meyer for a very long time. Um, Festival sounds great. But yeah, continue, and then we'll come back to what my next question will be because it will be along those lines.
Sure, sure. So L Acoustics, I guess, would be the next one. One of the things I really love about that stuff is the pan flex on the waveguides,
Yeah,
pan flex, whatever it's called. So, if you got, say, an asymmetrical audience area, instead of just being a straight out block, say you got a narrower side on one way, you can actually drop in different waveguides for your high frequencies.
right,
If you don't want it going, 50 degrees wide each way off center, you can have it go 55 and 35, or, there's various different options to get to
right,
shape like that.
right.
Uh, Also, their subs are just phenomenal. I mean,
Yeah, I mean
the SP,
KS28 smack, bro.
the SP28 was amazing for so many years, and then
Yeah,
they took that and somehow made it even better with the KS28.
yeah. The
So
KS28 is a beast.
just, yeah, the
It is an
output on that is
absolute
just,
beast.
I love
It's
it.
yeah, man.
And then the subs moving into Adamson, they've also got beastly subs.
Right,
Uh, the 119s and the 219s doesn't even matter if it's the S series or the E series. They're all phenomenal.
right,
Just very big musical sounding boxes. Just you put an Adamson rig up, it sounds great right off the top. Like you know that's
right,
really always been my first impression with Adamson. Is they're one of my favorite sounding right off the hop.
right.
Very little work you
Without
need to do.
having to do much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as a mixer, those are some of the same reasons why. Well, I mean, with L Acoustics, I like L Acoustics mainly the K2 because the K2
Mhm.
goes down to 30 hertz.
Yeah.
And for those watching, like for me, and then we're gonna talk like, which is why I said I'd circle back to this question. I like the approach where you're sort of leaving your PA wide open and then phase aligning your subs versus putting in pseudo crossover points. I mean, I like the box to do what it's designed to do. So like for me, with and that's because a lot of people don't realize that the musicality of the low end, right? So when you talk about low end, which is something that we understand very well in reggae music, because our low end is like that's our music is very
Maximum 8
rich
ball
in the low
frequencies.
end. Yeah. Is that the musicality of your mix is actually in your mains. Sub is just for feel. So if you have to over rely on the sub, you're not gonna find a lot of subs that are extremely musical. I mean, nowadays you are like, we talk about like the KS28 and then the SL sub from DMV, which is like incredibly scary in a good way,
That thing
like
is cool.
ridiculous. And then the 219, I mean, the 219 from Adamson was the first 19-inch, the first sub greater than 18 inches that I heard that I actually liked. Because
Mhm.
anytime I heard, and I wasn't privileged enough to mix on their previous generation of like the TS21, because I haven't been around that long.
Mm.
or it wasn't as popular as, let's say, going like everything else that was on the market. But because of those Kevlar drivers being so rigid and be able to push air at that 19-inch, the sub doesn't sound flabby. Like it's tight, it's musical, it's punchy, right? Which is like for me, that's what I want. Everybody is different. Like every front of house guy is different. But I just found, and then not to leave out the Meyer 1100 LFC. I think where we are in history right now is as exciting as it's ever been for subwoofer technology. Like I remember going into, we were in Rocks, and we had two sold out nights at Red Rocks with Stephen Marley, and on the Revolution tour, and there was Brown Note from out of Denver was deploying the PA, and GSL was brand new. And I remember standing there at loading, watching them put up the PA, and they're doing 12 aside on the mains, which I was like, all right, it's a big box, so 12 makes sense. But they only put out like 12 subs, six per side, and I'm like, these
There's plenty.
somebody never read the memo. Because at first I was like, this I've
Yeah.
never heard the sub before. So I'm like, somebody didn't read the memo, they didn't know it's a reggae show, like like they thought they're coming to put up a system for Andrea Bocelli or something, right? Bro, let me tell you, when they turned on that PA, me and Veer stood beside each other, and we could like our mouth was wide open. It was like, what? And you go up all the way to the back of that amphitheater. You go up there, and that thing is smacking like unreal. And then I went to see went to hang out with Tom Wood and Sean Mendes camp in Singapore. And they had a GSL KSL rig. So they had GSL on the mains, KSL on the outfields, on the side hangs. And we're talking now, this is probably like 30,000 people in this arena, right? And they have eight subs per side, right? So in end fire. So
Yeah.
a stack of four with a stack of four behind it. For 30,000 people, bro, 16
It's
subs.
crazy. Yeah.
And listen, when Mike Sleeth laid into that kick drum on the first, like when he rolled off that show, I thought I was going to die. I
Yeah.
was like,
First five rows just get knocked open.
bro, yeah, people are leaning back there like, oh. It's unreal. So
Yeah.
subwoofer technology. I mean, we did Kaya Fest with 12 KS28s for 10,000 people, like 12 subs for
Yeah.
10,000 people, and it's
Crazy.
unreal. I love the 1100 LFC. Is one of my favorite subs. I
Phenomenal
mean,
sub.
I guess at this point, all four of the big four are my favorite subs because
Yeah.
they're all my favorites for different reasons, right? Like they're so crazy.
Exactly.
So it's kind of interesting how sub technology has evolved. But the reason why I wanted to circle back to that question now is in an ever changing environment. Like in the past 2 to 5 years, a lot of new stuff has come at you as a system tech, right?
Mhm.
What's your approach, and how do you stay on top of all this new technology? Because it obviously factors in when you're designing a system, knowing the stuff, right? Like I mean, so
Mhm.
what's your approach, and how do you stay on top of all that stuff?
Well, I mean, it's tough because there's new stuff coming out all the time, like you were just mentioning. Um, Subscribe to notifications, whether it's on Facebook or now it'll be Instagram from all the manufacturers, because
Right,
they'll be putting out product release notifications. Various Acoustics post a lot of links to their white papers. That's a great learning resource. Pro Sound magazine, they'll have plenty of articles from industry heavyweights about whether it's new technologies or different ways of applying things.
right,
Basically, just stay plugged in as much as you can. Keep in touch with people. If you know other, whether it's system techs or mix guys or RF guys, just if some new product comes out, just text your buddies and
right,
be like, hey, what do you think about this? Have you used it yet? Have you not used it? Have you heard anybody? So it's really just, it's all an industry of sharing knowledge between your network. So,
right,
and whether you got a small network or a big network, or doesn't matter. Just keep in touch with people, because somebody that has probably used a new hot thing.
right,
And even if I haven't been able to have my hands on it, I can at least
right,
get an idea of what it is, what it does, how to go about it, kind of thing.
right. Um, I think this question from Brandon. Brandon's one of my subscribers from Windsor. This is a good question. He says, "Where
Mhm.
were you in your career when you began investing and getting certified? Were you already working with these bigger systems, or were you learning before you even got to one?" That's a very good question.
That is a very good question. Um, to be very obtuse, it was basically both. I mean, I was already working in the industry using, D&B and Meyer products and that kind of stuff. Um, but I felt like I wasn't using them to their fullest extent, was sort of where the sense I was getting. Like, yeah, it was, I was having success. I was getting gigs. Things were sounding fine, but it wasn't, there wasn't a wow factor. If a guest engineer from a band walked behind and played his test track, behind the console, plugged in his test tracks, I didn't get that. Like, oh yeah, this is right.
Right.
That's when I sort of kind of clued in. I was like, okay, there's got to be something more I can be doing here. And then that's when I sort of started making, sort of came about that thought process of, how can I get better at this? Well,
Right.
D&B offers training courses. So if I'm
Right.
hanging a V rig for, a festival, how can I make that system sound better? Well, I
Right.
should probably go find out from D&B. How
Right.
can I, tune and time align things so everything's nice and crisp, ready to go as soon as a band engineer walks in? Well, I'm using Smart.
Right.
Why don't I take the course, learn it right from the guys who designed it?
Right. And I think there's two real important parts to that question. Um, there's the side of getting certified on the PA
Mm.
stuff, so the DMB certification versus smart. I think if you're an audio guy, and you're doing any sort of front of house work, you need to learn smart. You you
I'd
you,
say, I'd
you
say
should
take the
know
Smart
smart.
course first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you should
before
know
any
smart.
manufacturer course, take Rational
Yeah,
Acoustics
you
because
should know
it's
smart like
it's
from the
very brand
get go.
agnostic. It gives you the straight facts. It talks to
Yeah,
about acoustic principles at their acoustic principles 101 is pretty much the entire first day of the course,
right.
as far as I remember it, and that will serve you no matter what brand of speaker at what level. You could be using
Yeah,
K1s, you could be
absolutely.
using QSC K8s.
Right.
It's still,
And
once
I
the
mean,
sound leaves the
if
speaker, it
you're
basically all behaves the same.
right, and I mean, I think for me, like if you're mixing a band on two speakers on sticks with subs, you should know smart. Like you should.
Hmm.
So to me, it doesn't really matter what level you're at. Learning smart and learning tuning is like 100% crucial. So we've talked a little bit, and again, a theme has been on this broadcast is that your mix is an entity, but then the PA and how your mix is now being delivered to the ears of people is a separate entity. If if you can mix like crazy, but you don't know how to get the PA tuned so that it delivers that mix to the people effectively, you're never gonna get to that elite level because your mixes won't translate. You still need to understand tuning, and not all of us are privileged right off the hop to have a system tech with us at all at all times. So you got to learn that. You got to know how to tune a PA, and I think learning smart is a crucial part of. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be as like when Steve sets up smart, it looks completely different from when I do it. Let's be honest. But at least having that knowledge foundation is a crucial
You can
part
look at
of
a smart readout and you know what it's telling you.
exactly,
You don't have to be
exactly.
an absolute wizard from it, but you got to be able to look at it and know what the information's telling you.
And be able to have an educated conversation with your system tech. Like, I mean, even if you're walking into a one-off or a festival, I can have an educated conversation with Steve. I can't do everything that he does, but be able to tell him what I want, how I want it done is important to this relationship, this two-way relationship of system tech. So now that we've gone through all that, because I
Mhm.
want to make sure we have enough time to really get into some of the stuff that we want to show people and give them a little taste of kind of what your job entails as a proper system tech. So talk to me about maybe you want to share your screen for this. I'll clear out our title slide and then you can show me. We can talk to the people about what we do from design standpoint. So once you shoot the room,
Sure.
so we're
So let
going
me
into a
uh, let
room.
me pull up some array calc here.
Yeah.
All right, you should have that now.
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm just going to drag that down to the corner there. There we go.
So again,
And
folks are gonna focus on the DMB side today, just because that's what we have available to us. I mean, and listen, Steve is very proficient with Lake, so he can design a system in Lake. He's done that for me many times, and every processor is sort of similar but different. So even if you're working on Outline Newton, if you're working on L Acoustics P8, is sort of the same. So this is the design section of array calc of the DMB. So we'll start. We'll for today's benefit of today's live, we'll kind of go through using DMB for those wondering.
Yeah. So this is sort of just a quick and dirty project I whipped up last night. It's called Demo. Load that up. There we go. And then naturally, your first part that you're going to want to do is look at your venue. So now the dimensions that I put in are completely arbitrary. It's basically a very straightforward,
Right.
flat venue, a little bit of a wedge shape, wider at the back than it is at the front. You got front of house, and then you got your barricade, media, security area up here. Most importantly,
Right.
we can put our subs in there.
Right.
So as far as D&B goes, when you want to create, I mean, I won't go through this in total detail because you can actually just learn it from D&B on their website. But quickly, you just, if you want to put in a new plane, put it in, you can name it, do all your dimensions there. If you want to place it anywhere in your workspace, you can drag and drop it.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, that's the quick version of that. So what we've got here, I'll just delete that plane. We've got our stage, 50 by 40 festival size stage. We've got our pit, like I was saying, gonna have your barricade there, median security, yada yada. Our audience area, we're shooting 200 feet from barricade to the back wall or end of the festival site, however you want to call it. We are 160 feet wide at the back versus 100 at the front. And then our front of house area is 80 feet from the downstage edge. Pretty standard outdoor festival, open air kind of thing.
Right.
So now what are we going to do next? We're going to put some sources in. Now I've already gone ahead and done this because, just to save time. So we're going to look at our mains. What we're working with here is we got KSL rig, we got 12 aside. Let me just open this up here a little bit. There we go. Mounting is flown. We're running it on D80 amplifiers. This is all just your generic data of where they are, your frame height, your X position and Y position in your coordinate space there. We won't do array processing. I'll leave that for D&B. This section here is where you go in and set your angles. As you can see down here, you select the cabinet, it highlights in yellow, and it'll show you where it's aiming on your listening plane out here. If you wanted to change angles, you can just do it with the drop-down menu, and then you can see the change there.
Right.
So I'm just going through this really quick. Stop me if you want me to slow down, focus in
Yeah,
on anything else.
folks, if you have questions, make sure you guys stop us in the comments in the live chat. I'm watching it.
Otherwise, I get excited and I just start doing things really fast.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jason could tell you, he'll ask me something on site and I'll just be like, oh, you just do this, 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 and this. And he's like,
Yeah,
what?
and then I'm like, all right, cool. I just walk away and leave him alone.
All right, so that is basically that.
One
You can
one
see,
thing I do want to
yeah,
ask you, right? Is because in nowadays, what's becoming ever so much more important, is the fact that there's increasing noise bylaws, and so aiming your PA and deploying your PA effectively is becoming more and more important to confining as much as you can, controlling sound within that audience area. So talk a
mhm.
little bit about how you fine tune, if you can dig in a little bit to fine tuning, like you're talking about arranging the angles and stuff, but just spend a
Sure.
little bit more time on that.
So with, say, a PA like this, obviously we want to keep everything inside our nice orange box here because that's
Right.
our audio.
I think Steve
You know,
froze. Yeah, I think you froze a second there. Are you back? Steve's Wi-Fi won't let him be great right now. Not. Oh, yep, we lost Steve. Hold on one second, guys. Let me try to get him back. I think one thing they need to do in this time is figure out Wi-Fi on Earth. Wi-Fi is really, yeah. Here we
Hey,
go.
look at that.
He's back. All right.
Anyways, apologies
Yeah.
for that, folks.
Yeah. I was just making the comment that they need to figure out Wi-Fi on planet Earth.
Yeah, as soon as they figure that out, we'll actually be back to work and we won't
Oh,
be doing
I'm telling
webinars.
you. All right. So go ahead and reshare your
Okay,
screen then. So we were talking about the
yeah.
orange box.
Let me get this screen back up here. There we go. You got me back?
Yep. Got you back.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I think where I left off was talking about the array site, which is this green line at the top.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's basically pre-built into D&B's bumpers right at the top here.
Right.
The laser, it's got a thermometer and a humidity reading.
Right.
So that'll we can get to that in a second once we start
Right.
talking about the remote view in R1.
Right.
But basically, what that green line here is showing in your profile view is your absolute top coverage.
Right.
So just skirting the edge of the listener height, which is
Right.
this second line here
Right.
at the back of our venue. So that's great. We're shooting all the way to the back of our venue.
Right.
See in the 3D view what that actually looks like. As far as looking at, say, our outer coverage, again, that's something we'll look at a little bit later on in our 3D plot window. But basically, just make sure you're not shooting too much out to the sides. That's
Right.
really the easy and quick way I can get to that.
And then in that bottom box there, direct sound level, what are you,
This guy.
I know what this is, but some people might
Mhm.
not. What are you shooting for there? What kind of variance are you trying to get to in terms of an ideal curve? Because that you have there is it looks really ideal
Mhm.
of no more than like on average about 3 dB difference at distance, right?
So
Is
what
that
this is showing you, there's two separate lines. And what I'll do is I'll just make a quick little change here in our, no, array calc wants to be slow today. There we go. So now you can see there's a little bit of separation there. Basically what we're looking at is there's two lines
uh-huh.
showing you the level at specified frequencies over the distance that you're covering.
Right,
Basically what you want these to do is you want them to match as much as possible so that your sound, if your curve one, the solid line, which is 1K right now, if that all of a sudden drops off, whereas your other line stays steady, now you're going to have a tonal imbalance at the back of your coverage area.
right,
What we're really trying to do is not so much match the overall level as it goes across the plane, but we want to match the two lines so that it tapers off the same. So if you have from front to back even a 20 dB drop, that might be what you're after. It's not in this case, but you want to make sure that both of those lines taper at the same rate. So you're not having an overly bright or an overly muddy PA once you
right,
get back into this area. It still
right,
sounds the same as it does here, just less of it.
right. Makes sense.
So that's basically what we achieve through what D&B calls their CPL filters.
Right,
Because once you start adding a bunch of cabinets together in a line, the low frequencies couple, and you start to
right,
get a build up
right,
of low and low mid frequencies. So
right.
what
I
D&B
also
does,
use for those watching. I also use the CPL feature on wedges. It's actually really
mm-hmm.
handy.
Oh, it's great.
To so that you don't get that low mid buildup when you're using. Let's say you got a 6 wedges across the front of your stage, right? To prevent that low mid buildup, which is a lot of times where you're gonna have issues with ringing out your monitors. Is gonna be
Yeah,
in
you
that
end
low
up
mid build.
cutting, 125, 160, 200
Exactly.
on your graph by 6 dB each. Why not just bring down that nice smooth CPL filter and then it's
Right.
all nice and clean sounding.
Right. Tishan asked, do you prefer tension or compression rigging on the KSL and GSL?
For bigger hangs, I prefer compression. For smaller hangs, I'd say 10 and under. Well, 10 for KSL, 8 and under for GSL, just because it's a bigger box.
Right.
Then it can go either way. Doesn't matter.
Right. Right.
I find with the bigger rigs, it definitely saves you time.
Right.
10, 12, 14, 16 aside, it'll save you quite a bit of time doing it compression way.
Right.
But if you're just doing 6 or 8, yeah,
Right.
either way is fine.
All right. Continue.
Continue. So, anyways, I'll set it back to where I had it with these CPL filters. which I think was -4. Yeah, so that looks pretty good there. So as you can see, there's a little oddness here, but I'm not going to worry too much about it for these purposes.
Right.
But our two lines, 500 and 1K, they're basically chasing each other all the way through our audience area, which is great. That's what we're looking for. Tonal balance reasonably from front to back. All right. Any last minute questions here?
No, I think we're good. Guys, if you got
Cool.
questions, make sure to drop them in the chat. All right, keep going. We'll keep going.
Cool. So that's basically our main left and right hangs of the PA. What we'll move on to next is our front fills, which are, for this exercise, we got V's, we got 6 V10Ps, and they're in 110 degree wide mode. And you can see they're spaced out evenly across the, there we go, now we can see them. Spaced out evenly across the front of the deck. The ones in the corners are tilted just a little bit to catch these corners of our audience area.
Right.
Spread out. Not much to really go over here. I'm pretty sure everybody's quite familiar with front fills.
Right.
One thing I like doing with front fills also is because they end up being essentially right on top of your subs, I put them in cut mode.
Right.
Because you don't really need much low end coming out of those guys at all. And then just, as a habit, I tend to put a little bit of CPL on the VPs. I find they just sound better that way.
Right.
So not too much to go over really here. A neat feature, if you're ever interested, is you can look at your audio coverage in this fancy looking balloon. But that's really more something that you can learn about from D&B.
Right.
I won't spend much time.
David, this is array calc for DMB. So, but it's very similar. Adamson blueprint looks very similar. They're all very
Sound vision's pretty similar.
Sound vision is pretty similar, but for purposes of this, Steve being a predominantly DMB guy, we're using array calc.
All right.
All right, so now I've designed my array, right? Well, we got to look at subs. I forgot we didn't.
So we got our mains, we got our fronts. Now everybody's favorite part, subs.
My favorite part for sure.
So, since we're using KSL for our mains, we're going to drop a bunch of SL subs in there. And what we're going to do is, even though like we were talking about, 12 subs aside, or sorry, not 12 subs aside, 12 subs total can cover Red Rocks, 8 subs aside, 16 total is doing 30,000 people at an amphitheater.
Right.
I'm just going to go way overkill. We got 8 positions, and they're all double stacked.
Oh, boy.
I know you like subs, so I had to do it.
Yeah. And somebody's going to die with that sub array with me mixing. I tell you that right now.
You can see right here. This whole area. Right
144 dB. Jesus.
Awesome. So anyways, as far as, general principles of a sub array design, I like to keep them just inside my outside positions. I like to keep them just inside or in line with where my main hangs are.
Right.
I find as you start going, and it's all situation dependent, but the wider you go with your subs, the less control you're going to get. Is sort of what I'm getting at.
Right.
In a very roundabout way.
Right.
So with this one, we can tell D&B where we want our subs equally spaced along.
Right.
Which I think I had them at 48 feet at X0, which is right along the edge of the stage. We can apply the layout, and then you can see it'll tell us, I wanted that 4 feet. So now it tells us maximum frequency for pattern control, aka how, once you get down to your nominal display here, how wide or how narrow you can make it using electronic time alignment, which will be shown here.
Right.
Basically, the higher frequency, the more control you got over your sub range. Just as an example, I'll spread these really wide out, like say 72 feet or something. And now you can see we can only control up to 66 hertz.
Gotcha. So the tighter that pattern is, the more control you have up to what you need it to be.
Exactly. And if you wanted to, say, have your subs spread out across 72 feet, but still control up to 99 or 100 hertz, you'd need more subs.
Right.
Because you can't space them that far apart from each other and still have them interact in a constructive way.
Right. Makes sense. That clear for everybody? Y'all following? All right. It seems like everybody is following.
Either that
Um,
or I'm just completely just messing up my explanations and like,
yeah,
this
no,
guy is
it seems
just
pretty
so out to
clear.
lunch. Like, what is he
So
doing?
Bo says what CPL? CPL is DMB's way of just cutting coupling of the low mid of the boxes, just kind of reining that in a little bit. So that's what the CPL feature is, just kind of when the more boxes you add in a line array, you start to couple that low mid. So CPL is just keeping that in check so that, as Steve said, your
Mhm.
501K line stays
Yeah.
close together over distance.
We'll just show you real quick. I'll drop this line down to say 125, and then we should be able to see if I set our low CPL back to 0, you can see how that whole line jumped up
Right, right,
by about 4 dB. And then
yeah,
if I put it to say minus, oh, doesn't want to go that well, -6. It has to actually crunch the numbers on this, so it's sometimes, as you can
right.
see, it's updating very
Yeah,
slowly.
but
But
you guys
as
can
you,
see
yeah.
that line get closer together, which
Mhm.
you want those lines as pretty much close to on top of each other as possible.
Yeah. So 125 and 1K, they're pretty far apart. So as long as they're tapering at the same rate,
Right,
the ones you really want to watch and have them lined up on top of each other is the 500 and 1K.
absolutely.
Those being only an octave apart, if those are really spreading apart somewhere in your
Right.
line, it's going to sound wonky as all hell.
Right, and these are all these programs like Array Calc, Adamson Blueprint, Sound Vision. They're free downloads, so you don't have
Mhm.
to purchase these. You can actually download these for free. And I think a lot of these companies are doing webinars right now, guys. So if you want to learn this stuff, now is a great time to do that.
Yeah,
Continue, Steve.
all free for download, and you can use them virtually. You don't need to have, like a D80 or a bunch of amp racks
Right,
hooked up to actually get in and use it and see all the features.
right.
Get in, you can just start playing around right off the bat. So, all right, so we got subs. Very cool. Now, basically, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to our next tab up at the top here, which is alignment. Very important one. So the first thing we're going to want to look at is, I'll set this back. So by default in Array Calc, what it'll show you, your alignment subs tab down here, is it will show you, there's a little measurement mic right there, and it defaults to being right at the start of your listening plane. So that's 8 feet off the deck for us, right where our
Right,
barricade ends. So what we're actually going to want to do is we're going to want to move that, and you can see our phase response changing here relatively because we're moving our measurement position. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the beast. You won't have the same phase response relative to a flown main hang and a ground stack subarray everywhere in the venue.
right,
Just not possible.
right,
Just because your distance relative to each of those sources will change as you move around the venue. So essentially, you want to go for the line of best fit. So if we're back at front of house here, now our little measurement guy's right there. You can see we've got a pretty good alignment until it starts to deviate just up here around 100 hertz.
right,
But realistically, with our SL subs, they're going to start rolling off around 80. So right up at 100 hertz, I'm not too worried if they start to deviate there.
right,
And that's only about a 60-degree difference. So we're not losing anything.
right,
So that's great. As we continue to scroll past front of house, you can see our measurement mic keeps moving as I move it back here. You can see our phase response, and this is looking at mains versus the subs. The subs are white, mains are in blue. You can see it doesn't really change that much.
right.
We're actually getting a very consistent relationship between our subs and our tops all the way through our audience area, which is great. It's going to sound pretty much even all the way through. Now,
Amazing.
if, say, for example, we had 0 delay on our subs, you can see now, oh, our subs are actually pretty far apart from
Right,
our.
right.
Then you can use this tab here, which delays your entire subarray. And you can see as we start adding delay in, you can see that line start to tighten up.
Right. And this is important because if you're shooting a venue, it kind of know lets you know ahead of time. One, obvious for obvious reasons, you want to do this ahead of time. You're not trying to figure out angles like back in the day, as you know, as manually. But most importantly too, you have an idea of where your trouble spots are going to be throughout your venue, even before you ever
Absolutely.
set foot in
Yep.
there.
And of course, you can do as much planning and pre-design as you want, but you always open up smart and you always measure it. You always check it to make sure it is exactly as you planned it. Because sometimes what may look good in the design, you get on site, and then for whatever reason, whether it's some weird acoustical anomaly inside a venue that you didn't plan for, whether it's atmospheric conditions are changing things sonically, certain things you just can't get out of the software. So you got to be there on site, measure everything, verify it every day, every time.
Right, right,
All right, where were we? Okay, great. So there's subalignment in a nutshell. We can talk about subalignment for weeks and weeks and weeks. There's all kinds of different philosophies and methods for doing it, but that's in the D&B world in a nutshell. That's what we're looking for.
right,
Two phase lines overlapping, checking in a few different spots in your audience plane. You're
right.
in good.
So take me through now to let's jump ahead and we'll probably do a master class with Steve and get into this in more detail. But today really is just sort of an introductory. There's so much we can do on
This
these
is quick
learn from
overview.
the pros, right? So
Yeah.
now let's push that now to R1. Let's export it and then see what R1 brings up in terms of control.
All right. Awesome. So I'm gonna go back to Zoom here, and then hang on. Forgive me, folks. I'm still new at the Zoom stuff. Stop share, and then I'm gonna go back to here and pull up R1. There we go. You should have R1 now.
Yeah, we got it.
Excellent. So
And this would be R1 would be equivalent for those watching who don't know the terminology. R1 is just the control software for DMB, so it would be equivalent to Adamson uses Lake,
the Compass for Meyer,
Compass for Meyer, and
Network
then
Manager for
right,
Acoustics.
right,
I forget what Martin calls their thing, but anyways.
yeah,
So very similar. It looks almost exactly the same. You still got, very similar layout, color scheme, everything like that. You're going to again go into it'll show up as your recent projects. I'm just going to open the one I already pre-created as demo underscore R1. It's going to load. It's going to load. There we go. Okay, great. So first thing we're going to check is our overview tab. So there's three, I'll start with this. There's three modes first: configuration, tuning, and show. Configuration, what this does is it allows you to configure your layout of things. Say I wanted to move this around, or if I wanted to add in any controls. D&B gives you a whole list of controls here that you can add in. You can place things, you can reassign it to different amp channels, different groups. You'll want to do that in configuration. Tuning is naturally, I don't want to be online. Tuning naturally is the tuning part of the equation. You'll do this when you're making your changes to delay, level, EQ, so on and so forth. Once you're done with that, you put it into show mode, which you can only do when you're saved and online. Yeah, but not worry about that right now. Show basically just locks out all the parameters other than, mute, power, that kind of stuff.
uh-huh,
So in your devices window in R1, I always get them mixed up. This is where you'll see what is on your network, which right now is nothing. I don't have an amp rack handy, unfortunately. You will see in here list of all your channels and what they're assigned to. Mains 1, digital, it's 2-way active. There's this remote ID, blah, blah, blah. And that'll go through for each of your amp channels and PA elements that you've assigned in ArrayCalc. R1 will open that and automatically create all of this for you. So you don't even have to worry about it.
right,
It'll also give you a list of individually each amp channel in the project and what it is doing.
right.
And then you can do some handy stuff from there. Actually, no, never mind. Can't do a handy stuff from there. Okay, so Matrix inputs and outputs, we're not going to worry about now because that's for the Soundscape DS100, which is a whole other ball of wax that I don't even have my hand around yet, but
Right.
I won't talk about that.
Let's jump to because I don't want to dwell on this part too much because we're already out of time. I mean, we could talk forever on this subject.
And I
But
don't really feel like me giving a course on D&B stuff is exactly what we're after today. But
yeah, yeah, definitely. We'll have to leave some stuff for the masterclass. But if we jump into now, okay, so now you're in the venue, you've got your Amprax set
Mhm.
up, we've gone through this R1 process. If you can jump over to Smart, because now we'll talk a little bit about tuning and what you're trying to achieve when tuning and some of the things like for me as a front of house engineer, I need from you as a system tech. Because one of the things that people have to understand is like so if we go back to our New Year's Eve show in Brampton, for example, I'm mixing magic. Steve is there. I get the budget to bring Steve in.
Mhm.
I have my system tech with me. There's some very strict dB limits around the square. So this is a outdoor concert on New Year's Eve in Canada, which alone in and of itself is craziness, because it's
It
cold.
wasn't too bad this year. Like
Yeah,
it was
it
cold,
was
but it wasn't
yeah,
cold.
yeah. I hear that, but I was freezing. I
Yeah.
mean, my Jamaican blood is not built for that kind of cold. So it's cold. So you have humidity to deal with. You have temperature to deal with. Um, you have a very strict dB limit around the outskirts of the square because it's a gig for the city. So they're very, very strict on DB limits, and I want to focus on mixing the show. I don't want to have to worry about any of that stuff. I don't want to worry about how it's translating front to back. As long as it sounds good where I am at front of house, then your job is I rely on you to make sure that what I am hearing at front of house and decisions I'm making at my position mixing is translating through the entire venue. So there's some things that you do with Smart to ensure that that's happening, right?
Mhm.
So talk to me a
Absolutely.
little bit about that approach and quickly because we got like we'll
Yeah.
do another 10 minutes for everybody watching. And if you got any questions, please now's the time, drop them in.
Mhm. Now, unfortunately, I don't have my measurement rig available today, so or a PA to tune. I can't really do much in that regard. But basically, you know what? I'm just going to scroll off of Smart because there's nothing I can actually show you.
Do you have like a target trace on Smart that you could show like something that's saved
I don't
from?
actually because
Oh, okay.
I generally don't work off a target trace because I'm
Okay.
not working with the same artist or the same show
Right.
day in day out.
Right.
Basically, my target trace is in here. It's my ears. If I listen to my test tracks after I've tuned everything and it sounds right, then I'm comfortable handing it off to an engineer such as yourself.
Right.
Now, if I was touring dedicated with, say, you or another front of house engineer, I'd work together with you on the first couple of shows. You know, what do you want the PA to sound like? Then I would save that target trace in and work towards that
Makes
every day.
sense. Makes sense.
But because I'm a hired gun and I'm freelancing all over the place with different shows all the time, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for me to keep a target in there because any guest that comes in is going to have their own,
Right.
you know,
Right. Makes
requirements and
perfect
needs.
sense. Makes perfect
Yeah.
sense.
But anyways, going back to say a little bit about the New Year's Eve show with DB limits, weather concerns. There's a lot of hard surfaces around that whole square too. You know, a lot of storefronts with glass windows. So basically, it's the same procedure as we just went through really quickly. Design in a ray calc. Make sure you're shooting the sound where you want it, where you need it. Put it into R1. Link up with the amps. Start playing noise through it. Put my mic out. And I've got a pretty good routine set up for now with, you want to start on one side, take a few measurements, a near, a middle, and a far. Make sure, like we were looking at with our distance over or our sound level over distance in that one corner of a ray calc.
Right.
Make sure no weird, the high frequencies aren't dropping out completely at the back of the venue. Basically, just make sure it's consistent. And again, if we've done our design properly, it will be consistent. With that one, when it's really cold, high frequencies don't travel quite as well in the cold, so we need to jack up a little bit of put a little high shelf on our long throw cabinets just to make sure those highs are getting out there in the back. And then from there, we'll move on to main and sub alignment, which again we can preview it a little bit, but you want to measure it and verify. And I'll measure this the same way. I'll take it. a near, a middle, and a far, with measuring the phase alignment relative to the tops from the subs. And then, of course, I'll come back with my mic, measure it at front of house, where the important guy is mixing from, and make sure that the phase alignment is good there as well. Because if it's either too bassy or not bassy enough where you are, that's going to affect your decisions behind the console, which then affects the whole audience experience,
Right.
particularly in the low
Right.
frequencies, which, as you were speaking of earlier, is where the musicality is
Mm.
for a lot of genres of music. And then basically from there, play some test tracks that I know very well and walk the entire space and make sure it's doing what it's supposed to.
Right. Very, 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 very effective process, I must say, and a very simplified way of explaining it. I'm sure in a future stream we can get into a little bit more detail. Um,
That was the very quick and dirty version of
yeah,
explaining it.
yeah, yeah.
But the
We'll
good
we'll
thing
have
about
to.
doing it in sort of that way is you don't have to, like, you can do that entire process in 15, 20 minutes, or you could spend 3 hours just doing more of the same.
Right,
You
right,
know, it's
right.
a process that works well in both ways. It can be quick and fast, or it can take as long as you want.
Yeah. Man, this today was good. I think a lot of people have got like a lot of value into and more insight into understanding what the role of a system tech is, and how do you effectively go about accomplishing what you set out to accomplish. And it doesn't stop at the setup. I mean, normally when I'm on a show with Steve, Steve is my extended ear, as I call it. So
Mm-hmm.
what I never leave the console once I start mixing that show when I have Steve, because I don't have to be concerned about what it's sounding like at the back, what it's
Yeah.
sounding like at the front. Steve does a lot of that, and a lot of
You
that.
focus on what you need to do in the mixing console. I'll go
Exactly,
walk around in the
exactly.
background. I'll go right up to the front fills, make sure it's all good there.
Yeah.
Walk
And
around.
even when you have measurement mics and stuff, I want people to understand that it's not just about trusting those, but also using your ears, though. Still a very important part of the process.
The ear is the ultimate deciding factor because something can look as good as you want it to look on smart, but if it doesn't sound right,
A
then it
hundred
doesn't sound
percent.
right.
A
So,
hundred percent. I
yeah.
agree. So, guys, if you got any questions, we'll take a few questions real quick, like super quick. If I don't see anybody answer, in like 10 seconds, I will. I will. We're gone.
No
Going
pressure, no
once.
pressure.
Going twice. All right. Well, listen, Steve. Thank you so much for
Thank
deciding,
you for having me.
agreeing to do this. I know you were working on some stuff earlier today, and you kind of rushed home to be able to be on. I want to thank you very very much. Oh, Tishan jumped on with a question. I'll get you to answer this in closing.
All right.
What's your take on using a wireless system for measurement mics?
It's great for convenience. Absolutely. Uh, there's wireless systems out there like Electrosonics designed one specifically for measurement. So it's supposed to be flat frequency, flat phase response throughout the entire range that you're measuring. It's a little pricey. I've seen also some very good system techs that I hold in very high regard, using just regular wireless. Because ultimately, what you're looking at, especially in a transfer function, is the difference between what's being measured out of the console and what's coming through the air.
Right,
So if whatever the wireless unit is doing to your signal, if that's accounted for in the difference in your transfer function, it's not a variable you need to worry about at that point.
right, right.
Me, I'm old school. I still like a wire, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with using wireless for measurement.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching. It's the weekend, so y'all have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home if you can. Let's continue to beat this thing, and hopefully we'll be back out to doing shows soon. And definitely thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. Learn from the pros. Check out my Patreon, patreon.com/ Jason Reynolds Pro Audio. Tashawn says he's waiting on this masterclass. Me too. I mean, listen, no matter how many times Steve is going to show me this and teach me this, he's always going to end up being the guy doing it for me. So thank you
Well,
very
you
much,
just don't want to
Steve.
load in. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
that's the main part. I'm past those years of my career, I think, at this point. Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
Well,
We'll see. We'll see what happens in the
yeah,
future.
I know. Thank you guys for watching and join us next Wednesday. If you haven't already done so, go to jasonreynoldsproaudio.com. I'm going to send out an email on Sunday night that has the guest for next week, and we're going to hit it again on Wednesday. All right. Thanks, guys, for joining. Take care.